All right, we are live and ready to get back into Bible study. We are ready to chat, we are ready to talk, we are ready to learn and read our word so that we can grow. We are doing chapter by chapter Genesis 20, and we are still in the Abrahamic era, if you will. We are learning all about Abraham's life, and I really like when you get to places in the Bible like this where you can read chapter by chapter of like what's unfolding year by year, almost play by play, if you will, in someone's life. It's kind of gives reality TV a little bit, but of course you're reading about it. But this is a real person. These are real events that happen. This is his interactions with the world and how God is teaching him. That's my favorite thing to actually study is, okay, people like Abraham, what was going on in that time, and like how was God unveiling Himself more and more and more to His creation. And so that's what we're going to touch tonight. It actually should be much shorter tonight as far as the Bible study because the chapter is not as long and it's a fairly straight, simple story. So we are going to jump into it. I'm going to simply share my screen and we are going to read from Genesis 20 in the NLT version. And that will get us going tonight for our Bible study. Um, for those who do not know, previous weeks we have discussed up to this point all about Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot and that whole situation. That was last week. We talked about how God warned Abraham about Sodom and Gomorrah, destroying it. We've talked about his promise to Abraham for a child. We talked about all these things so you kind of start to see it play um, tonight in this chapter just on like what's happening next. So we're gonna read all the way through it and we'll come back and talk about it. So it says Abraham moved south to the Negev and lived for a while between Kadesh and Shur, and then he moved to Gerar. While living there as a foreigner, Abraham introduced his wife Sarah by saying, "She is my sister." So King Abimelek of Gerar, sent for Sarah and had her brought to him at his palace. But that night, God came to Abimelech in a dream and told him, "You are a dead man, for that woman you have taken is already married." But Abimelech had not slept with her yet. So he said, "Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Didn't Abraham tell me she is my sister?" And she herself said, "Yes, he is my brother. I acted in complete innocence. My hands are clean." In the dream, God responded, "Yes, I know you are innocent. That's why I kept you from sinning against me and why I did not let you touch her. Now return the woman to her husband, and he will pray for you, for he is a prophet. Then you will live. But if you don't return her to him, you can be sure that you and all your people will die." Verse 8. Abimelech got up early the next morning and quickly called all his servants together. When he told them what had happened, his men were terrified. Then Abimelech called for Abraham. "What have you done to us?" he demanded. "What crime have I committed that deserves treatment like this, making me and my kingdom guilty of this great sin? No one should ever do what you have done. Whatever possessed you to do such a thing?" Abraham replied, "I thought, this is a godless place. They will want my wife and will kill me to get her. And she really is my sister, for we both have the same father, but different mothers. And I married her. When God called me to leave my father's home and to travel from place to place, I told her, 'Do me a favor. Wherever we go, tell the people that I am your brother.' Then Abimelech took some of his sheep and goats, cattle, and male and female servants, and he presented them to Abraham. He also returned his wife Sarah to him. Then Abimelech said, 'Look over my land and choose any place where you would like to live.' And he said to Sarah, 'Look, I am giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver in the presence of all these witnesses. This is to compensate you for any wrong I may have done to you. This will settle any claim against me, and your reputation is cleared.' Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female servants so they could have children. For the Lord had caused all the women to be infertile because of what happened with Abraham's wife, Sarah. All right, people may not think it's fair, but this is what happened with Abraham. This is yet again what happened with Abraham. I cannot remember the exact chapter, but it had to be somewhere around. This is when they first went to Egypt, so maybe somewhere around Genesis 12. We had read this a very similar story. So I just want to actually hop back to that story. We're going to share my screen again. I'm going to find it in Genesis 12 because I think that is pertinent for our information tonight. Because this is a very similar story to something that already happened. All right. So it the second half of Genesis 12, we have starting at verse 10, we have the story of when Abram, remember he was Abram at one time, God changed his name later, much later on to Abraham. He's Abram at this time, and Sarai. Sarah is Sarai. He also changed her name. Remember, they went to Egypt after they left Haran, and they came down to Shechem. And then a famine hit the land, so they needed to go to Egypt. Why? Because Egypt was a kingdom. Egypt had food. They went to get food in Egypt. So this is what was happening when they went to Egypt. It says, at that time, a severe famine struck the land of Canaan, forcing Abram to go down to Egypt where he lived as a foreigner. Again, he's living as a foreigner still. As he was approaching the border of Egypt, Abram said to his wife, Sarai, look, you are a very beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Let's kill him. Then we can have her. So please tell them you are my sister. Then they will spare my life and treat me well because of their interest in you. And sure enough, when Abram arrived in Egypt, everyone noticed Sarai's beauty. When the palace officials saw her, they sang her praises to Pharaoh, their king, and Sarai was taken into his palace. Then Pharaoh gave Abram many gifts because of her: sheep, goats, cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. But the Lord sent terrible plagues upon Pharaoh and his household because of Sarai, just like Abimelek had a curse because of Sarah, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh summoned Abram and accused him sharply. What have you done to me? He demanded. Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister and allow me to take her as my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and get out of here. Pharaoh ordered some of his men to escort them, and he sent Abram out of the country, along with his wife and all his possessions. All right. So as we read and study in Genesis 20, I just wanted to kind of do that flashback reminder of what happened. Same situation, almost play by play happened in Genesis 12. We're talking about something that is at minimum 20 years apart. Minimum. Probably more, but I'll have to look at Abram's timeline to know exactly when that happened. Y'all, you cannot make this up. The same thing happened. There's time. Abraham has been blessed at this point. There's things, he's moved on. He's had children, or a child at this point, and the same thing happens. So it makes me wonder, was Abraham really in the wrong? Because in both situations, Abraham never got scolded. Only the people who were doing wrong by Sarah got scolded. So we're just gonna go through the PowerPoint, but that's like one of the things, I like to talk about how I think through stuff sometimes. And so that's one of the things that I think through, like stuff like that. When it happens, it's like, dang. Um, so that's just something to consider. Why is it happening, and what? How should we be thinking about what actually happened? Not put our feelings and emotions in it, but how should we be thinking about it based on how God responded to it? Okay, so we are talking about God's favor and how it overflows tonight. And specifically, we're using Abraham as an example to see how his favor overflows, regardless of situations that may arise when other people don't like it. We're talking about how God blesses people, how He chooses to bless people, which oftentimes doesn't seem fair. Well, they say favor ain't fair, and here it goes. So let's start back off at the top of the chapter. It said Abraham moved south to the Negev and lived for a while between Kadesh and Shur, and then he moved on to Gerar. Now, here is something critical to realize. When Abram first came, he moved from Ur the Chaldeans up to Haran. This is where he spent most of his life up here in Haran when he moved with his father, Terah, I believe. They moved down. He left. He was called by God, moved down, and moved to Shechem. Well, this when they went to Egypt, this part is the part where they got kicked out because in Genesis 12, he lied about Sarah. Well, the whole time they left that, they were living up in this region, I guess you can say basically all around areas of Judea, which would be present day like Judea and Jerusalem in the Bible. And he was living, remember, between, I think it's Bethel and Ai, or somewhere he moved with Mamre. He moved with Mamre the Amorites, if I'm not mistaken. So he did was move a little bit further south. So south towards the Negev. The Negev is a desert. So this I'm just pointing this out because this gives us location of where he moved. So he's still in the same region. He's moving from place to place. It's kind of like think of it how where you live is probably like a different county or two or three over, maybe the next states, but there's that space is not as large as like the states are. So I would think like more so county or another region within your state is where how far he will be moving. So remember, Abraham at this time he is still a foreigner. He still travels from place to place and sets up tents to live in. That's an important concept to remember as you read throughout the Bible and how God gave them a homeland, but they are living in tents. Now remember, God has promised all this land to his descendants, and he has promised to make his descendants as numerous as the stars. At this point, we have it where Abram already had a child. Um, that's with Hagar. Then he gets a promise that he is going to have a child with Sarah, and his name is going to be Isaac. So they have that promise still. But what Abram just left is remember what happened in the last chapter. Sodom and Gomorrah, which is north of the Dead Sea, so kind of here ish, just got destroyed. The areas around it on this part, it's on the eastern side, just got destroyed. Abram has moved. He wasn't living there, but he was living close enough to where he could see that this stuff is happening and God has destroyed it. He has now moved south. So this is just describing to us how he moved and where he moved to. Um, so Gerar is here, Shur is here, Kadesh is here. So it's like between that. So he's somewhere in here in this region. All right. While living there as a foreigner, living where? In Gerar. While living there as a foreigner, Abraham introduced his wife Sarah by saying, "She is my sister." So that means everybody he's meeting and talking to, he's saying, "This is my sister," just like he did in Egypt, literally, just like he did in Egypt. Now, the the only problem with this is that he's actually telling the truth. It's not a lie, but some people would say like, "Oh, it's a lie by omission because you're also not sharing that she's the wife." But he is sharing that, "Hey, this is my sister." So now we have it to where King Abimelek of Gerar, this is the king of this region, this area, sent for Sarah. Why did he send for Sarah? Because if this is your sister, so how it goes is you stay under the household of a relative as a woman until you're married. So if this is your sister, that means your sister is not under the authority, I'm using that word very loosely, of a man, of a husband, so she's unmarried, so she's available. Is what you're communicating to somebody. So the king is like, "Oh, well, let me send for her, and I can make her my wife. She can live here." So he bought her to his palace. Well, that didn't go over too well because that night, that night that he brought her to the palace, God came to Abimelech in a dream and told him, "You are a dead man, for that woman you have taken is already married. So the information that Abraham failed to disclose is now um, is now all the way out there. So God unveiled the information and has now shared that, oh, this woman is married, and you are going to be punished because she is married. Now, I guess the fault comes in, did he ask if she was married? No, but like I just told you, the assumption would be like if you're under someone's care, you're not married. So not Abraham is going to be punished because he told Abraham told Abimelech that that's my sister. Abraham doesn't get the punishment. Abimelech is the one who took Sarah to be his wife, so he's going to be the one that's going to get the punishment. So God is very much so warning him what's about to happen. So Abimelech had not slept with her yet. So, and slept with her meaning he had not made her his actual wife. He had just taken her into his palace, probably to be cared for, to be pampered, and that was going to be part of the process. Though, is that you move from this room to this room and you make it to into the king's bed. So, this is Abimelech's response. He's like, Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Basically, are you going to destroy my people by killing me because Abraham lied? So he said, didn't Abraham tell me she is my sister? And she herself said, yes, he is my brother. I acted in complete innocence. My hands are clean. So he's saying, are you going to really destroy an innocent nation when I asked and they told me this information? So I'm only acting based on the information that I was given. So, like, my hands are clean from this situation. Obviously, yes, the Lord will destroy what you would consider an innocent nation because he told him you are a dead man, but that's why he's coming to him. So he says, and it says in the dream. So this is them having a conversation in a dream. In the dream, God responded, yes, I know you are innocent. That's why I kept you from sinning against me and why I did not let you touch her. Yes, I know you are innocent. That's why I kept you from sinning against me. So he would have been sinning against God had he slept with a married woman. No, we need to take that and we need to dwell on that. He, as the king, would have been sinning against God if he had slept with a married woman. It is a sin. It is not, oh, this is consensual. This is, I was given permission. It is a sin. That's why he said that. That's why I did not let you touch her. Now, this is his instructions to Abimelech. Return the woman to her husband, and he will pray for you, for he is a prophet. Then, then you will live. That is crazy. Okay. Abraham then allowed him to get into this crazy situation where he almost dies. And the only way that he's going to get out of the situation is to return Sarah to Abraham and then turn around and ask Abraham to pray for him. That is this is like the underlying favor here because it's telling us who Abraham is. Abraham is a prophet. That means he is a man of God. He is a mouthpiece for God. He is doing the work in the will of God because of who he is and his proximity to God. Remember, Abraham has a relationship. Abraham comes from a lineage of people who have had relationships with God. So this is nothing new for his family line. And he is operating in the realm of a prophet. So that is his gift. And so, because of his proximity to God and his relationship with God, when he prays, God listens. God hears him. God answers his prayers. He is working through Abraham's life and his lineage, his family line to do his will. And so he has like a special connection, but special like sort of line of communication, if you will. Then he's going to live. Then you will live. But if you don't return her to him, you can be sure that you and all your people will die. All you gotta do is return her. He could have been very hesitant. He could have been, you know, not humble. And he could have thought like, oh well, I deserve her. She's beautiful. This, that, and the third. And he could have let his whole nation die. But that's a smart man. So let's look and see what happened. Abimelech got up early the next morning and quickly, with the quickness, called all his servants together. When he told them what happened, his men were terrified. So, what I love about this is that you have this group of people at this point in time, we don't know about their faith or whatever. We do know that God is speaking to him in a dream. There is never a time that there's anybody that God cannot reach. If he wants to reach them, he's going to reach them. It doesn't matter how evil somebody is. Um, God wants to speak and how he wants to move. He is King of Kings. He is Lord of Lords. So he has that ability to speak to them. So he spoke to him in a dream. Abimelech had enough sense to know who it is that's speaking to him and to question his innocence and to kind of plead. He's got enough sense in the dream to plead in a court case on what's about to happen. Then he had enough sense that when he wakes up in the natural to believe the dream. Okay, this is a process. When you have a dream, you need to believe the dream, just like Abimelech did. Now, I didn't say you had to come into agreement with the dream. Sometimes we need to rebuke something because it's a warning telling us that this might happen if you do X, Y, and Z, or it's like sort of a foreshadowing of what's coming, and you can rebuke that. But like, there is never a time where it's like, oh, that was just a dream. It's not. Nothing is just a dream. This is supernatural communication that's happening. So Abimelech had enough sense that when he got up in the physical, natural, that he called his servants and told them exactly what happened. The servants had enough sense to be terrified based on what Abimelech shared with them from the dream. So all we have is this response kind of coming on right now. So then it says Abimelech called for Abraham. So he told his servants what's happening. So that way the servants can be prepared to do quickly and to let's sort of basically rectify this situation. So now you got to see how they rectify the situation. So Abimelech says to Abraham, "What have you done to us? Okay, this is a we thing. This is my nation. This is my people, and you have brought something on us." He demanded, "What have you done to us? What crime have I committed that deserves treatment like this, making me and my kingdom guilty of this great sin?" He understands what sin is. He understands that he is responsible for his people. And he understands the severity of what could have happened. So he's scolding Abraham. He said, "No one should ever do what you have done. Whatever possessed you to do such a thing?" So this is not a rhetorical question. So Abram replies and gives an answer. So he's explaining what would have possessed him to do such a thing. He says, "I thought, this is a godless place. They will want my wife and will kill me to get her. And she really is my sister, for we both have the same father but different mothers. And I married her. When God called me to leave my father's home and to travel from place to place, I told her, 'Do me a favor. Wherever I go, tell the people that I am your brother.'" Okay, so he's explained his whole thought process on what he thought about them, how he figured out it. I mean, assumed that they were going to respond a certain way, and then what took place. Now, all it tells us next is that Abimelech took some of his sheep, goats, cattle, male and female servants, and presented them to Abraham. Now, wait a minute. He just asked him all these questions. He just got done demanding answers. What happens is that Abraham gave the truth of how he thought about it. And what we see happening next is that all of that truth is never addressed. He never confesses to this being a godless place. He never confesses to their thought process of them wanting to possibly kill him to get to her. He never says, "Oh, that makes sense that this is your sister," or anything like that. He never confirms or denies anything that Abraham has said, which makes me think that Abraham honestly was probably in the right to assume that these people are ruthless, godless, and will kill me and take me out, because the same exact thing happened the same exact way in Egypt. He explained the same thing. And in the Egyptian king, Pharaoh, never challenges or denies any of the sort of accusations or assumptions that Abraham brings up. So this leads me to believe Abraham was probably right, which is why God had to warn these kings. Sometimes we might try to do things in our ability when God is the one who needs to be able to act. He needs to be able to be the one that warns him. He warned both Pharaoh and Abimelek of the situation with Sarah, that this is a married woman. You are going to suffer punishment because, yes, Abraham said this, or Abram said this in Genesis 12, but this is a married woman. So my principles still stand. So Abraham probably did do the right thing, even though other people would see that as lying. Abraham did that to protect himself and to protect his family the best way he could, and he let God handle the rest of it. The one thing you will not find is that Abraham never gets scolded by God. Yes, he got scolded by Pharaoh, who was a king, and he got scolded by Abimelek, who was another king. But the King of Kings never scolded him, never said, hey, don't lie, don't do this, because Abraham understood the situation that he's walking into and understands how these people think. So is Abraham wrong? Some people would say that he is, but like when you really think about it, was he wrong? Because if he was wrong, why don't we see where God says anything against him or anything just directly to him? You're not gonna find it. It's not there. So this is what ends up happening. This is the level of favor that Abraham is walking in. Not only did he mislead the king, he's actually about to gain. So Abimelech took, it says in verse 14, he took some of his sheep and goats, cattle, male and female servants, and presented them to Abraham. He gave him five different things, not just a sheep. He took some of his sheep and goats, this plural, cattle, plural, male and female servants, plural, and presented them to Abraham. This is like a gift. He also returned his wife Sarah to him. Then Abimelech said, look over my land and choose any place where you would like to live. Okay, so he done gave him some assets, some things that he can use to make money and to build his household, grow his household. This is wealth. He gave Sarah back. Then he tells him to choose the part of the land that he wants to live in. Because this is we're gonna be good. I want you to choose the part of the land. It's like you're right. So let me reward you for your steadfastness. Your steadfastness. You choose any place you want to live. Now, previously the response was get out of my land. When he was in Egypt and this happened, he told him to get out. There was a foreigner in Egypt coming there because of the famine. The Egyptian said, King said, get out. Abimelech said, pick wherever you want to stay. You can live there. Now he wasn't saying you can buy the land. He said you can live there. You can reside there. You can use the water. You can use the land, and we're gonna respect you. And then he said to Sarah, look, I am giving your brother, because this is your brother. I know it's your husband, but this is your brother, 1,000 pieces of silver in the presence of all these witnesses. This is to compensate you for any wrong I may have done to you. This is directly 1,000 pieces for Sarah. This will settle any claim against me, and your reputation is clear. So he did three things with Sarah. This is how he's performing in the natural to what's the word? It's not compensate. It's I can't. It's an R word. I can't think of it. It's like a court term when you are giving back like what's owed and more. I can't think of the word right now. But what he did was he gave 1,000 pieces of silver. So he paid up. I was trying to still think of the word. He paid up. So he compensated her for any wrong done to her. That action of giving to Abraham also settled any claim against me. So there's nothing that Sarah or anybody can come and say the king did wrong. So it settles any claim, and so it clears out that sort of anything that can be brought against him. No charges can ever be brought against him about that, and he cleared her reputation. So in case anybody ever thought anything, he's like, she good, she innocent, I'm innocent, we innocent, nothing happened. It's all good. So he did three things by doing just with one act. He did three things. Okay, this is how it closes. It says, then Abraham prayed to God. Why did Abraham pray to God? Remember, God's instruction to Abimelek was to give back the wife and ask Abraham to pray for you. So Abraham has to pray. Otherwise, it's only a half done transaction. So it says, then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelek, his wife, and his female servants, so they could have children. For the Lord had caused all the women to be infertile because of what happened with Abraham's wife Sarah. Now, some people might read that and say, like, "Oh, wow, they were under a curse." Yes, they were, but did they even know it? This is why I ask this. It tells us in verse 3. It says, "But that night." Okay, so what happened before that? What happened before that is it says, "So King Abimelek of Gerar sent for Sarah and had her brought to him at his palace. That night, God came to Abimelek and told him all this stuff. That very next day, Abimelek woke up and did all this. He was questioning Abraham. He gave him all the things. So this all happened. This is like a 48-hour period, basically. By the time Abraham is praying for him, not that much time had passed by. But this is what they would have risked had they not prayed. The Lord had caused all the women to be infertile because of what happened with Abraham's wife. So part of the you're a dead man, you're going to die was actually the infertility that he had caused to happen between Abimelech, the wife, and all the servants. Okay, let's go back to it. It says, if you don't return to her, you can be sure that you and all your people will die. That's what it said in verse 8. You are a dead man, for that woman you have taken is already married. This is the threat that is coming. Will you destroy a nation? Remember, is the question. But then we don't find out until the end how that nation was going to be destroyed. Because we know that you need a next generation in order to continue on with something. You need people to work. You need people to you need growth, right? You need that to happen. They were going to be under a curse. I'm not reading this and seeing that, oh, God was going to come strike all of them in their sleep type of dead man. You're gonna die because you can't grow, because you can't build. Because what happens is at the end it tells us, for the Lord had caused all the women to be infertile. All the women, everybody in that nation, in that kingdom was infertile at this time because of what happened to Abraham's wife Sarah. All the women are going to be infertile. Nobody's going to be able to bear children. Everybody's going to die out because there is no growth happening. It's like a famine of the womb, essentially, and who knows in what other ways God could have caused him to die. But I like that this was a very particular way that he chooses to show his power and authority by making them infertile. Now, this is a separate situation, but I'm also want to use this example to just show that we need to be very careful how we are assuming infertility in this day and age, because sometimes this is a curse of the Lord. Sometimes this is something that God has done to the people, to a nation, because of the way that we act. So we have to be very careful as a nation of people, whether you're talking about the US, like whatever nation you're operating under, you have to be very careful to know that the sins of a nation um, can just be something that you just reap over years. Like the consequences of these sins can just be something that's coming down over time, and might not be something that you are actually able to like pinpoint a reason. And sometimes we have to go back and pray for the forgiveness. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying that this is any particular situation that we're dealing with now. I'm just saying that sometimes like this is a pattern. God is choosing to show this particular pattern of infertility because of sin. And so could it be that, the US has a lot of like infertility issues? Could it be that the US and other nations that are suffering from that is a result of a punishment, some sort of sin that we're operating under that's leading to the level of infertility that we're seeing? Just like it did for Abimelek's nation. I don't know. I'm not just kind of throwing out that answer because, we see it in the text. Now, this is the end of Genesis 20. It just stops there with Abimelech's story. And so next week, when we pick up, we're actually back into continuing the promise. And you'll be able to see like what timeline this is sort of happening in Abraham's life. Because remember, prior to this chapter, we read about Sodom and Gomorrah, so that was Lot's situation, and we read about when God came to Abraham and Sarah. This is when He changed their name. Like 2 3 weeks ago, we did this in Genesis 18, I believe. When He changed their name, it was when He came and He reminded them, like, this time next year you will have a child. So we kind of pick back up on that next week. But right now we know that they have relocated to a different place. They are living with more abundance and wealth than when they came. Their wealth and stuff has obviously grown over the year, but now it's like more. Now He's added that wealth to His family. And so we're going to continue to be able to see how God continues to just bless Abraham. Mind you, in that story we read, nothing that was actually wrong with Abraham. This was all punishment towards Abimelech and his people. And so now we get to see how God continues to bless Abraham. It's not because God is ignoring anything wrong Abraham has done, is that it's nothing wrong with it. So I hope that was maybe a slightly different take or understanding of that scripture. Some people have never like read it, but we're not skipping the chapter because it's not as much information or it's more boring. It's just that it's a shorter Bible study. But per usual, I will send out information tomorrow for the newsletter and update our weekly Bible study guide. So it's been a pleasure, and I will see y'all next week.